This is the South African headquarters of the Laureus Sport for Good Foundation, a small but passionate team who do extraordinary work right around South Africa, affecting the power of sport for good. And it's work that's mirrored right around the world through the foundation, which is in turn an offshoot of the greater Laureus family, which includes most famously the Laureus World Sports Awards, the Oscars of the sporting world, held in a different city around the world, as they have been for the last 2 decades, and also the Laureus Academy, some of the greatest stars in the history of sport who come together to not just give a face to Laureus, but also do so much work in promoting that ethos of sport for good. But this office is important not just because of the work that Laureus does here in South Africa, but also because through the founder, Johann Rupert, and a team of South Africans, including Nelson Mandela, South Africa has such an integral role to play in the story that is Laureus. Integral to getting Laureus off the ground was its very first CEO, a South African called Ian Banner.
I joined Johann Rupert in 1994, and in our discussions, and I've still got the handwritten note that I made, he said, "What do you think about Oscars of sport or World Sports Awards?" And I said, "I think that sounds very interesting." And I came up with this idea that we should create the concept of athletes judging athletes through an academy, and suggested we go and find the greatest names in world sport to be the heart of our organization, not only judging annually the winners of the awards program, but also, more importantly, perhaps supporting what is today Sport for Good, and that in itself is a very interesting story.
One of the very first Academy members, and a man still chairman of Laureus Sport for Good South Africa, was Morné du Plessis.
Ian Banner, who was working for Johann Rupert, we met in a London park. In fact, he said, "Come and have a lunch. I've got to talk to you something about to start up a foundation that would use sport and the acclaim of these famous sports people to change young people's lives around the world." And that's when I first heard about it, and I thought this is very ambitious.
We had our founding Academy meeting, and at that stage we had 43 committed Academy members, and 29 of them came.
And he was explaining to everybody what he had in mind, and there was a little bit of skepticism, you know, can we really do this? Can this really be done? Is it going to work? And he said to Ian, maybe our guest will have more impact.
And I went to the door, and I opened the door, and there was Johann with Madiba, and he walked in. And his exact words were, he said, "You are my kings and my queens."
The man with the vision for what we now know as Laureus, South Africa's very own Johann Rupert.
So I think they were a bit surprised when he walked in, but of course he was such a saintly figure to not only South Africans but to the world, that just him appearing had a magical halo over the event.
I said, "Johann, I never thought I would say this to you, but I believe Laureus has the potential to be the most powerful movement in world sport. We've now got an academy of 69 of the greatest names in world sport, 250 ambassadors below that, all willing, able, and very capable of supporting the cause."
Amongst the early employees of Laureus, a wide-eyed young Durbanite who'd made his way to London in search of fame and fortune, Brett Graham.
The foundation and the organization, you know, Laureus, from a broader point of view, has come a very long way. If you consider that it was an awards event that had a charitable initiative attached to it, and, you know, 5-6 years into our existence, that shifted quite significantly to being a foundation with an awards initiative almost attached to it. You know, that was our communications platform and our flagship event, but for 364 days a year outside of the awards, the focus was the foundation.
Tens of millions of kids lives have been touched by Laureus around the world. In South Africa, 30 programs are supported by the Laureus Foundation in South Africa. Around the world, there's some 150 programs and projects that use different types of sport, but all with a focus on using that sport and to bring the kids in with their love and enjoyment of sport, but to engage with them on a social component.
In the beginning, I think, with Madiba's words, there was almost a sexiness to the concept of sport having this ability to change lives. You know, people, it was dreamy, if I could say that. You know, I think people in principle agreed with it. But, you know, with Laureus over the years, we've been able to empirically quantify what that impact is, and that's been an important development over the years.
if you look at that brief moment of hope after Rassie, Jacques and Sia and the whole team unified the country, then you wonder why can't our country be the same like that all the time. And that's what President Mandela stood for, and that was the reason for the start of the Laureus. More the unification than the award ceremony tonight.